Today's Deconstructing ADHD series is going to look at cultivating a growth mindset in your family. And this is a very well-researched part of positive psychology, and it is so incredibly important for young people, and not only in an educational environment where it's used quite a lot, but in the context of parenting and families. So I'm going to start with a story, and I'm going to introduce you to this woman called Debbie. And if you imagine, she is a middle school principal and a single mom. She's raising her son and his two sisters. And the boy is uniquely different. He's a little bit scrawny, he's got large ears, and he's finding himself the target of a lot of teasing, both in and outside of school. He's also very energetic and gets up to a lot of mischief. And this, combined with isolation, is hard on the mom, and also compounded by teachers' comments such as, your son is never going to be able to focus on anything. After a while, unfortunately, the parents decided to split up, hence why she was single mom, which was weighing heavy on this poor boy's mind and unsettling him. But Debbie wanted to keep consistent and kept on reassuring him that you've got lots of potential and keep striving. And she was tirelessly advocating for her son within the school. Normally, when a child is not conforming, the school asked for the child to sit at the front, and she was saying, please, can he sit at the back, because he needs to move around to be able to get up and just let him be. So she managed to change the school around to doing that. By the end of 7 years of age, Debbie was at her wit's end because he never seemed to stop going. So she put him into a club and activity, thinking it would just expel some of this energy. But he resisted it with every fibre of his being, and tears, tantrums, and huge resilience. But she persevered, and eventually the repetitiveness of this activity allowed him to be calm. And he'd stay at this activity for 3 hours every single day, and he started to feel control of his mind and his body. Debbie, in the meantime, was getting a little bit more space, loved the fact that he was now enjoying this activity. And she instigated what she called Debbie Days, which were moments of self-care carved out for herself, either a whole day on a Saturday or in between during the week. And that was supporting her own personal well-being amidst all the demands for everything else. By the time her son was 10 years of age, he had now developed great strength and determination, and people started to perceive him differently. Roll on 5 years later, this boy, Michael Phelps, was starting to be noticed at the Olympics. He is the most decorated Olympian of all times, with 28 medals, and 23 of them are gold. And this story is not only a testament of how he developed an extraordinary talent in the pool, but also the power of perseverance and relentless belief in overcoming adversity for a boy who would never amount to anything because he couldn't focus on anything. And that just sets the scene for our talk today. And what we're going to look at is the capability of an ADHD brain and what happens if we reframe the narrative. And we're going to explore a growth mindset, and we're going to look at how you can put that into practice. So the best way of developing a growth mindset starts with talking about and understanding the brain. So helping your child understand that his or her brain physically grows different connections as they practice and learn new skills. And the more you start talking about the brain and the factual size and the workings of it, the more likely they become excited about the learning process and become less worried about making mistakes. So if you're thinking of the brain as a computer, and thinking about how ChatGPT is going on at the moment, it learns, it gets the data in, and it makes mistakes. Can only learn and improve by making the mistakes. And that's a key learning today. To improve, we need to make mistakes. And children, by learning that, can start to embrace that and phrase things differently. So the idea that the brain can change its own structure and function through just thought and activity is the most important alteration of the brain, since we sketched out the basic autonomy and the workings of its basic components, the neuron. And there's this phrase that's used quite a lot called, when neurons fire together, they wire together. Meaning over time, every time you do something differently, learn something new over time, that will create new connections, which will strengthen and lead to rewiring the brain. So things that you can do with your children is telling children when they're, applying themselves and working hard, that's the feeling that their neurons are connecting and making their brain stronger. And practice allows those connections to become stronger and stronger and stronger, in the same way as if they practice kicking a ball or skipping on a rope or something. Practice strengthens the skill, strengthens the brain. So then they start to learn that with increased effort, it can lead to results and also increased motivation and achievement. So there are two mindsets, and this is what Carol Dweck coined as growth mindset. There's the fixed mindset tends to avoid challenges, or it ignores criticism, fights back criticism or feedback, doesn't believe it, often is feeling threatened by others. The goal ultimately is perfection. The failure is a sign of weakness to the fixed mindset. And struggle is a sign of lasting lack of ability, of intelligence. So it's trying to prove oneself all of the time. Whereas a growth mindset, its goal is learning. So if you keep that in mind, learning, and failure is a positive signal, like ChatGPT, of pushing past your comfort zone. It's an opportunity to grow and to learn. So struggle ultimately makes you stronger. And if you think about the mindset of an ADHD brain, it can very easily get stuck in a fixed mindset and see the brain struggles with things like time management or planning, organization, or in some cases, ability. You might then make assumptions of what that means. And that might be, what's wrong with me? I'm stupid. I'm dumb. I'm no good at this. This is too hard. I'll never be able to do that. And these fixed mindsets can keep anybody stuck, but they're toxic to the ADHD brain. And it can trigger things like rejection sensitivity and underlying procrastination and avoiding tasks. Whereas a growth mindset embraces the challenge, and they see struggle and celebrate the effort. So they're looking at the extra effort the ADHD brain puts into daily life and says, yeah, I'm honoring that effort and that hard work. So seeing possibilities and working to find strategies that will get them there. So it's essentially any dream you can dream can be accomplished. And it doesn't mean it's going to be accomplished easily. There's a recognition that it is going to be hard and there is going to be struggle. But without that struggle and without that failure, you're not going to be given the opportunity to grow. So it's embracing that. Research findings show that a growth mindset among people with ADHD helps them to self-regulate and to cope more effectively. So just a brief bit about me, if you haven't joined me before. I'm a mum of two boys with ADHD, and I'm currently doing a doctorate on the efficacy of positive psychology coaching for parents of children with ADHD. Because what I found in my own experience and working with several clients over the years, that actually by applying positive psychology on oneself, it has a ripple effect, a cascade effect around everyone around them, including your children. And positive psychology ultimately looks at what's right with people as opposed to what's wrong. So we're constantly focusing on what can be achieved, what can be done, what is right, what can be developed, as opposed to looking and focusing on those things that are not going so well. So how can we practically apply growth mindset in our daily lives? So if you think about, as children develop, their brains mirror their parents' brain, and we've spoken about this in other sessions. In other words, the parent's own growth and development, or sometimes lack of that, can impact the child's brain. So as parents become more aware and emotionally healthy, the children will reap the rewards of that and move towards positive health themselves. And we're going to start with the most practical thing you can do is model the behavior. So ask yourself, what is your mindset like? Children often can overhear you think out loud. So what you're thinking, your child might actually be hearing, but also things that they're actually hearing in day-to-day life. So how are you applying your learnings to mistakes? So let's say you have decided to try out a new recipe from a cookbook and you started and it's not going so well. What are you saying? Are you saying, oh, this is so hard. I don't know why I tried doing this. This is so ridiculous. I'm so rubbish at this. Or are you saying things out loud like, wow, this is much harder than expected. Right, I better keep on practicing it and get better, and eventually I'll get the hang of it. So by modeling that sort of behavior when you're coming across adversity, how are you sharing your growth and how are you embracing this potential learning opportunity? But please remember that not all mistakes are equal. And actually, this is from one of Carol Dweck's teachings. And there's various different types of mistakes. So the sloppy mistakes might be the ones that we're really not paying very much attention to. They don't have much of an impact. But how do we stop those kind of sloppy mistakes from happening again? Start asking ourselves, how do they happen? What mood was I in? What environment was I in? What was happening before? What was happening after? Was I in a rush? Was I really not enjoying it? And we can start to then alter the environment to reduce those amount of sloppy mistakes. We've also got those higher learning opportunities, again, low intentional, and they're those aha mistakes. And the aha moments happen when we don't really pay attention. So misremembering a birthday, for instance, and we might put in the wrong month, but then that might have been in a result of you rushing and hurrying. So another opportunity to learn. It might be things like unconscious bias. So that means not being aware in the moment. So when you meet somebody or you're responding to somebody, you're responding automatically without really being present and thinking about it. It could be full of assumptions. So we might want to try and help somebody thinking that our help is welcome. We find out that the person didn't actually want help in that moment. So these are kind of areas that might be aha moments. I see. I understand, by kind of thinking, reflecting, and changing the result. But then we look at those high stakes mistakes. So these are the high intentional ones and have high stakes. So sometimes these are to do with a big disaster. So let's say a huge mistake might be a person in charge of security in a nuclear power plant, which could actually lead to catastrophic disaster. But it also could be something like a child not studying hard enough because they think, what's the point? So they put in half the effort and they get very low results. But it's about this constant reflection piece, looking at the challenge ahead, adjusting and learning, because that's where we come into these stretch mistakes. So by consciously and intentionally stretching ourselves and choosing to do something differently, choosing to step out of our comfort zone, choosing to accept that we mightn't get it right, the opportunity is much greater. And it's in a controlled environment. And it means that the child or the adult is also kinder to themselves, and it's allowing them to go into mastery. So it's practice, practice, practice. The things you can do to make mistakes as learning opportunities could be asking yourself, well, what mistakes do I make? What challenges do I face? How do I respond to these setbacks? How do I communicate them? Am I hiding them? Am I sharing them? What value do I put on feedback? So if someone says, you were a bit direct, do you retort back in defense? Or do you accept the feedback and go, okay, what can I learn from this? You're asking yourself these questions. How can I solve problems? And then the other thing you can look at is incorporating, especially with young people, is incorporating yet into your vocabulary. So you will have heard small children having a fair share of statements, I can't. And these might be, I can't read, or I can't rollerblade, or I can't ride my bike. And adding in the yet makes no hope to possibility. So I can't read yet. I can't tie my shoes yet. So it's about you catching those I can't moments and turning them around into not yet, but there's hope. There's hope, there's optimism. So it's building that mindset. And then you can go one step further by starting to reframe the narrative. And this is one of Harold Dweck's quite significant features of a growth mindset. It's starting to see beyond the problems. It's very solution focused. And it's looking at what one can do as opposed to what one can't do. And again, this follows in from the period of reflection and looking at those different types of problems. The one thing that connects it is curiosity and reflection. So that's thinking about what happened, why it happened, perhaps, what I could do differently next time, and then practicing that. And taking a curious approach, you're looking at the solution. So it might be, I'm not good enough. And then you might think, well, what can I do to improve? If I don't think I'm good enough, what can I do to improve? Or I give up. I give up is a great opportunity to find a new strategy. And let's say they're struggling in school, I can't do maths. It might be, I can't do maths yet. So what can I do? Well, I could train my brain to learn maths. So if I'm not learning it from the book, I might learn it from a video or watching something that's going to engage me more. So it's constantly asking you those questions from a curious approach. I made a big mistake. Can I learn from this mistake? Plan A didn't work. Well, let's try plan B to Z. This is good enough. I'm going to try and keep doing my best. And Carol Dweck talks about saying this, not that. Saying things like, I can see that you've worked so hard on this. And that's helping your child understand the value of their effort. Saying things like, you're so smart, which parents often do. And one thinks that's a great thing to say, but it can make a child think that intelligence is a fixed quality. You could say, it seems like it's time to try a new strategy. Then a child will know that they can control the outcomes by making choices. So you're giving them choices. And something you might not want to say is, don't worry, it's okay. Maybe you're just not cut out for this. And again, it's coming from the right place, from a heart place. But then children might feel that they don't have the capacity to improve or change. So I'm going to leave you with some takeaways. And this is looking at, today, I'll choose a growth mindset. And to do that, it's about embracing challenges, recognizing that improvement is possible no matter how hard it is, and that effort and practice leads to mastery. And I know some of you might have children that they're constantly failing and failing and failing with the same thing over and over again. And, the last thing you want to say is just try harder, because that's not what the best approach is. But it could be finding different ways around, so it's learning, not about repeating the same mistake over and over and over again, because that's not giving you the chance to grow. What could I do differently? How could I approach this differently? What support do I need? It's not admitting defeat that I can't do this. It's, I'm going to continue on trying. I need to try in a different way and make sure my efforts are now noticed. And the big lesson from today is mistakes and failures are learning opportunities. So seeing every hardship as an opportunity for learning, no matter how difficult that might feel, because feedback helps growth. So that's this week's content about growth mindset. If you did want to meet and have a chat and figure out how this would work for you, because I recognize that everybody is completely different and their family dynamics are very different, but by all means, just get in touch with me. And I'll just pop the link as well in the chat in a moment. And also just to flag that I have created a new membership if you are looking for further support. And this is primarily about your well-being, while it does have lots of resources about helping your child and supporting them through their ADHD journey. And this is about supporting you in your parenting journey, which it may be a little bit more challenging than someone who's raising a neurotypical child. So next week, we're going to look at strengths-based parenting, and that's on April 24th. We're going to look at building those solid foundations with character strengths. And character strengths is a quite firm foundation of positive psychology, and that's strengths-based parenting. And we're just going to hand it over to questions now.